Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Still Rose's podcast. This podcast was created for women by women. You have Jenny and Melissa today on this podcast. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, hello.
So post Thanksgiving, but pre-Christmas, post Thanksgiving, pre-Christmas slump. Do I call it? Or is this like we're going uphill now into holiday season?
I don't know. I always feel like once Halloween hits, I say this every year to like friends, family. I'm like, once Halloween hits, you blink and it's literally going to be Christmas.
Yeah.
So I feel like for whatever reason, those 2 months are like November and December are always truncated. Like they always feel like it's like
blur.
one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's so for work, we're always looking ahead a quarter, you know, so my year and mentally, professionally, like is always over, and like not over, but in August, I'm already quantifying like 2024 work. Like I'm already thinking that far ahead. So I'm used to the skip, like I'm used to the quickness of how I call it Q4 of how like the third quarter or fourth quarter goes, because that's all the holiday rush to. And then we also always have like for my line of work, we have quite a lot of breaks throughout November and December. There's a lot of like just time off and things like that. And just wrapping things up for the year. So professionally, I'm always like, oh yeah, like this is like the end, but you're right. I went on Halloween day. I went to the store thinking I could pick up some last minute items to put out on our Halloween candy table. And they had already flipped the store to Christmas, or excuse me, was it Christmas or Thanksgiving? I think it might have been both. They already flipped Halloween out. And I was like, oh, I wasn't ready, but thank you.
Well, it was crazy. I think it was Halloween, like the day after Halloween, I had to run to Marshall's for something, and literally the entire store was Christmas. So I was like, oh, yep. All right then. We just, skipped ahead.
It's insane. It's insane. And well, now that Thanksgiving is behind us, Thanksgiving, I think, is, you had said in our last recording, it was one of your favorites when we were growing up. I really enjoy very much Thanksgiving because that's one of the big holidays that's not about presents, and it's really more supposed to be about like being together and spending time with people that are valuable to you in your life. And by value, I mean they're positive forces in your life, or they're people that you just love, family, friends, or whatever. And it's centered around, coming together and giving thanks. And I always have a very deep appreciation for that. I'd like to note my cooking activities for Thanksgiving. Melissa, do you mind?
Yes, no, please.
I had, let's see, I made 140 empanadas, some for my family. And then I did empanada deliveries to my neighbors. And then I made ratatouille, baked ziti, arroz con gandules. Like I was like on it this year with preparing food. But my favorite part of it was having the kids do things with me while I was cooking.
Yeah, no, that is like, well, first of all, I think that the neighbor delivery is really cute. And nobody's doing that for us. So I really wish that was a thing. Second of all, yeah, I think it's funny. I think as we get older, what I've been noticing is cooking not only becomes a de-stressor, but it's like I'm very focused on when I'm cooking things. Mm-hmm. If they're family recipes, I try to do it like have Mia help me, which sounds crazy because she's only 3, but like I want to set that tone already because Thanksgiving morning, Mia and I made my grandmother's recipe for butternut squash casserole. And it's something that our grandmother made. And then once the torch was passed where my mother would host Thanksgiving, she always made it. And then this year was a little bit different because we both stayed in Florida and we went to one of our family's cousins. Like it was like our second cousin. So, but my mother decided not to make the butternut squash. And I was like, oh, no, send me the recipe and I'll make it. And that was what me and I were doing Thanksgiving morning. And I actually, that's the picture I sent around to the family because I'm just like, it's important. Like our our grandmother's turning 95, and I don't know, it's just something that you feel connected with. I don't know, the food and like passing on the tradition to the kids. I think it becomes more and more important.
Yeah, 100%. And I've said this like a whole bunch of times. It's incredibly important to me that my kids like how pick up my love of cooking and pick up like and understand that mommy puts so much love into these dishes. Now I'm not saying Monday through Friday there's a lot of love in my cooking. Monday through Friday I'm like, have a pizza bagel and just please eat it. Like, that's kind of where I'm at.
Right.
For these larger events, you're right. Like, in my regular life, no, I am not making 140 empanadas. But for the holiday season, it was important to me that I pulled through some traditional recipes for my family, but then also to do that. I've never done that. This is my second year in our neighborhood, and um, I wanted to do something like that because these are our neighbors. These are people that like we're becoming friendly with, and we look out for each other in the neighborhood. And everybody kind of just, if something's going on, if somebody's sick or if somebody's kid is, getting off the bus sooner and the parents aren't there to pick up, like we all look out for each other and we all just make it a point to do that. And this year I just wanted to really show my gratitude to my neighbors just for being themselves, really. Like they were very welcoming when we moved down here, and it made the whole transition even more important. Now, Melissa, since you were down in Florida this year, I know you didn't get to experience it the way I did, but so a lot of people get really stressed over the holidays, having to encounter family members that they might not necessarily like so much. And there's stress in general with, like, I'm going to say it, sometimes power struggles between mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. I say that with lots of love and lots of love. I say it with a lot of love because I think it's across the board, but it's an interesting concept here because Melissa and I have talked about this quite a bit. The shift that happens when you're dating someone versus once you get married. And it seems like there is almost like a change in the relationship.
Definitely. I think for I can never compare because it's always funny. Um, actually, this came up in Thanksgiving. Well, just about like people, it was somebody's anniversary this weekend that was there. And, they dated, I don't know, a year and a half before they got married. And then, they've been married 15 years or whatever it is. And it's always funny because people are like, oh, how long have you and Matt been married? And I'm like, well, 4+ years. And they're like, oh, you're still in the new stage. And I was like, we've all together, we've been together 18 years. Um, but we've been married for. So when I recall like that switch from dating to married, like I don't have that same sense of like the division because we dated so long and that it was like we were married for 10 years before we actually got married, if that makes sense.
You know, it does because you guys were together for so long that it's almost like an ease of transition in basically like to the married situation. Um, yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. So, that's another element there too to the relationship because the longer you're dating someone before you get married, that could have a positive impact too on, your relationship with your mother-in-law. It could. It doesn't always, but it could. Um, Now,
Potentially.
potentially, yeah. It doesn't always, but it could.
And
Um,
I think the biggest factor for us too is that because we were so young. I mean, we started dating when we were 17 years old. So it's like they grew up with, like, vice versa, our families, they grew up with us and they watched us grow up. So again, it doesn't always mean it's going to be a positive outcome, but I think it does define that relationship a little bit.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you interested in podcasting but not sure where to start? My name is Jenny Benitez, and I'm here to help guide you through your podcast launch and maintenance. Check out the link in the episode description for Podcasting Unboxed, your comprehensive startup guide. I am very excited to work with you. Yeah. No, absolutely. I absolutely agree. I think that I know that I've given like this theory a little bit of thought. I think I talked about it on a mini-sode at some point, but I had given this theory a little bit of thought. And it's not necessarily the getting married that propels you into unknown territories with your mother-in-law or in-laws in general. I think that it might actually be once you have kids. Now, hear me out, because I don't think that Melissa, I don't know if I've floated this theory past you yet, but
no, I haven't heard this one.
All right, so listen, this is my theory on this, is that, once you get married, like my mother-in-law and I had a wonderful relationship when I was dating my husband, and she used to give me tips on how to keep them. And like, she was like, if we got into a fight, she was like, no, just you're fine. So we've always had a really good relationship. Like, I learned Spanish when I was dating my husband just so I could talk to her. Like, it goes deep. These roots run deep. She taught me how to cook. Everything I know about cooking came from my in-laws. Like, believe me, the love is real. However, we didn't have a traditional setup in the sense that, like, we got engaged and then married and then had kids. We got pregnant and then got married. So there wasn't like a buffer for me to really flesh this out. But after I had my son is when I noticed the relationship shift a little bit. I think it's because biologically, right, after I had my son, my chemical makeup of my brain changed to shift me into motherhood so that I would have these heightened senses, this adaptability to my kids, to my babies. So that gave me that direct connection to the baby. Now, because I had that, my mother-in-law has that, but for my husband. And so because now it was two like mother females, basically, she already has hers and she was trying to impress her like motherness onto my kid because she already has it in her system. So it kind of auto triggers. And then whereas I'm new to it, but I only have it to my son, so like it's like almost like a competing matriarch of she's a mother and now I'm a mother. And that's really where like the issues could start to bubble up, because once you have a kid, you're like figuring it out for yourself. How am I taking care of this baby? What are my methods? How am I parenting? Like all that stuff. Whereas obviously she's already gone through it. So
And like, I think it also is what comes into play is the type of mothers, because I do think like, I think that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but like there are, I think, different types of mothering and different types of mothers. But in your case, I think you're both very involved, like your mother-in-law and your husband, from what I've observed and from what I know, are very, very close. So I think,
true.
and you're obviously very, very close, and especially with your firstborn. So I think the dynamic is very similar, and also like you're saying, it's like not a competing type of dynamic, but it's, it's there,
Right, exactly. And it's not a competition, but it's just like
no,
it's like that differing of opinion, basically, or that differing of sense of like, no, I'm not going to do it quite how you're telling me to do it. And then therein leads to frustration. Now, like I've seen, even horrible situations like this. Like my little nonsense is like pretty mellow in comparison, but like, I mean, there's people that have told me stories about mother-in-laws that are like, trying to take over the whole house and like, will just kind of come in and let themselves into their home, like they're like really overbearing and want to be involved all the time. I had read somebody's story in our IG account where the woman literally had to like draw a line and say like to the mother-in-law, like, you can't be doing this, like that's it. And unfortunately, she was basically villainized for this because she set a boundary and was like, you can't do this. Now, in my opinion, like if you as a mother are setting a boundary to say to somebody, I don't want you to come over so much, or I need some space to like form my family, like that should be celebrated. Like, yeah, fine. It might feel a little hurtful in the beginning, but at the same time, it's like your, daughter-in-law or whomever has the resolve or strength of mind to say like, you know what, I really need to be able to do this. Let me have some space to be able to do this on my own. And like, to me, like, I feel like that would be such a, like, yes, you might feel a little hurt at first, but like the long run, this woman is showing you that she's really going to be a good mother. It is difficult. And this goes also to family dynamics as well. And, having to sort of navigate through families, because it's not just mother-in-laws. Like, I mean, in the holiday season, when you are getting together with people, it is a time where you're getting together with extended family that you aren't always exposed to. And so you have these interesting dynamics that are brought to the table, where you're seeing all these other people. And, my husband and I are always like very grateful to see our family. Like, we get very excited to see everybody. And we always come with this attitude of like, to each his own, there really is no right way to do anything. There is no perfect way to do anything. You can look at any person out there and say like, I'm going to use myself as an example here. My kids are independent thinkers. They question everything, which is amazing, but it's also kind of a nightmare. But they're independent thinkers. They question everything. They're very articulate. They will tell you their opinions. Like, they'll legitimately talk with you and just try to think through things. They're very smart in that sense. But I let them have tablets super early because there was 3 at once, and I needed sanity time. And, that gets judged quite a bit. And it's like, well, yeah, they're struggling in school a little bit now. Like, and was that because I gave them tablets too early? Do they use their tablets too often? Is that something that I've done, wrong here for them? Perhaps, yeah. There's studies out there. There's legitimate literature about this. But the point is that like, now I have that scenario, but then maybe you have like, someone else's scenario where it's like, oh, well, they didn't have tablets. They were, I know Melissa with her daughter, tablet time was not a thing. Melissa 100% was focused on her daughter. I can't even wrap my head around that because I couldn't do it. She was 100% focused on her daughter. That, like, and that's great. But my point to bringing the two dynamics up is, at no point has Melissa ever said to me like, well, you shouldn't have done that. There's never a judgment there. And then vice versa. Like, she didn't want her daughter to have a tablet. Like, good for you, man. Like, I wasn't planning on doing it either. So the whole point of this is really to say, like, when you do come together, mother-in-law, cousins, sisters, brothers, like whomever you're coming together with, everybody is raising their family their own way. They're living their lives the way that they see fit. And you just go with it. Like, there really is no sense in getting worked up for something that like is really not yours to be controlling. They're happy with their life. Okay, wonderful. It does not have to be as stressful of an event as people make it out to be. So it's just one of those things that like, family dynamic can get a little bit touchy. There's also quite a bit of push-pull. Melissa doesn't get to experience it quite as bit from her side because she's in Florida, so she can do a little bit more of like what she wants to do when she's down there. But when she comes up here, she experiences it where you're being pulled in quite a few directions. Now, the complication that she doesn't have to deal with is that she doesn't have any siblings. Melissa's a single child, so from my side, it's I have two brothers, but on my husband's side, he has three sisters. And so coordinating things used to be quite interesting. Now it's not as big of a deal because everyone's families are grown, everyone has kids, and so we keep it really simple. We focus our holiday time on, okay, well, who do we really want to focus on? Who do we really want to spend time with that we don't get to see that much? And so we make those selections, very specific selections on how we're handling things. And then it's also the people that show us the love too, and people who are showing us the attention, saying like, we want to be part of your lives. There's so much more to it than just, all of the media around holidays. There's so much more to it than all of the Black Friday shopping, which I'm an avid Black Friday shopper. I love it, love the sales, but it's not just about that. This is truly beyond trouble with mother-in-laws, beyond any drama that you might have with family members that's like annoying, beyond all of the nonsense that goes around it. At its core, the tradition is really meant to be, what are we grateful for? And being grateful for each other and spending time together. It's hard in day-to-day life to really recognize that and to make sure that you are being grateful for everything that you have. And so this is almost like a little reminder. Now, I had, you've heard me talk quite a bit about being grateful, meditating, like the whole 9 yards. And I had not an epiphany moment, but I have access to all this content from Kathy Heller, who is like my guru, basically. I learned so much from her. And I have access to all this content from her. And every once in a while, like I will flip it back on and finish out some of the modules that I haven't quite finished out. And I finished out one in particular where it was talking about almost getting in your own way with things. And being grateful is one of the easiest things you can do to start to, push your life into a particular positive direction. And so being grateful for everything that's happening around the holidays and like easing back a little bit on the stress, like you need to do all of it, take time during all of this to really like reassess, especially if you're, going to family events and stuff like that. At this point, I think it's safe to say, like, it's okay to say no to something. It's okay to say, like, I don't want to go to so-and-so's house because I'm uncomfortable with the vibe. Oh, don't go. Like, that's a big thing that it's like unpopular opinion, basically. On my side, it's unpopular, but I don't care, because if I'm uncomfortable with somebody's vibe, or I feel like they're not really like being positive people, or if I feel like they're just toxic and I don't want to be bothered with them, well, guess what? I'm not going to speak to you. It just is what it is. I'm not going to involve you in my kids' lives. I'm not going to reach out to you. I'm not going to make an effort, because why would I? And, I do get a lot of crap for that because my parents don't love that I am that way, but it's very self-preserving. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about like having boundaries and setting boundaries for yourself. And if you feel like, you don't want to go to so-and-so's house, or you don't want to be bothered having to plan something out with somebody, don't do it. Like go with your gut and do something that is positive for you, positive for your partner, positive for your children. If you have kids, like you don't have to comply and conform. And I think that is like, that notion is across the board, from my perspective, the most important thing. The most important key takeaway you could have is not to comply if you don't want to. Because one, it's like self-preservation, preservation for your sanity, your mental health. But beyond that, if you have children, this example that you're giving them is telling them it's okay to set a boundary. It's okay to say no to something. And you have to drive that message home, because once they leave your house and they're out in the world, they need to be armed with that. So make it a point to really take stock and think to yourself, like, is this event going to spark joy? You know, is cooking food for all these people going to make me happy? Me personally, I love cooking, but not everyone's like that. And that's fine. Don't feel like you have to conform. I can't say it enough. So holidays always bring up a lot of tension. So you'll notice it more now. But outside of the holidays, it's the same thing. You don't have to conform to anybody else's standards. You only have to really be yourself. And that's like probably the most important thing to remember during the holiday season is, what is making you happy? Are you joyful? Do you really want to, do you want to shop for everybody? Do it. Do you not want to shop for everybody? No, don't do it. Did you buy gifts for people the last couple of years and no one said thank you? Guess what? You don't have to buy gifts anymore. Like, nobody's acknowledging you. It's not really the thought that counts anymore. They're not even acknowledging it and saying thank you. Don't bother. Like, there's just so much to it that people get stuck in these patterns, and then they get resentful, and then they're pissed off because they got roped into doing something that they didn't want to do. Take stock of how you feel. Your emotions are going to be your barometer through this holiday season. And that's really what's going to help you to navigate it, to determine, like, do I want to do this or do I not? So, Melissa, I was basically do I have you?
Yes.
Okay. I was basically just going over with the listeners, like, how important it is to really only participate in events that really spark joy over the holiday season, like outside of mother-in-law stuff, outside of siblings, cousins, like everything else, that everyone always feels this pressure to kind of conform or to do whatever has always been set forth in their families as traditions. And I was just putting out there the notion that, like, you don't have to do that. Like, you can basically do whatever you want and only really do the things that spark joy, because setting boundaries is one of the healthiest things that you could do for yourself, especially not just during the holidays, like in life in general, but starting to set boundaries during the holidays could really change the trajectory of like everything else that you're doing.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think it's interesting because, believe it or not, I was having a conversation with your brother, and it was a little bit of a different tone. We were just talking about like how we're all getting older and we're all starting families, and how, you know, like our uncle will probably be selling his house in a few years, and that tends to be where a lot of our larger family events take place, and, you know, just how things will look like in the future now. And, you know, I made a point to say, I was like, you know, things might not look like they always have, because, you know, factors change, and and dynamics change. But I was like, it doesn't mean that just because you aren't doing what you thought you would be doing, or if there's a shift in something, it doesn't mean that you can't create wonderful new traditions for your own kids. And I was like, that's where I'm spending and focusing my time, because I don't know, for many years in my childhood, holidays tended to be stressful. Like you know, we've talked about this before, where it was like, it was focused on who's getting what holiday and where are we going and how many places do we have to go. And, you know, even into Mia's few years, you know, I started to bleed that into her childhood. And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I want to do, like you were speaking to, things that spark joy, do things that you actually want to do, that you enjoy. Spend time with people that bring positivity and lightness and happiness into your life, your child's life. And then if that involves making new traditions, it's not that you forget about the old or that you don't participate completely, but it doesn't mean that it stops you from creating new traditions for your children that, one, set healthy boundaries, and two, just sparks lightness and fun into the holidays as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so easy to lose track of that and want to, I don't know, it ties into social media and different things, but wanting to create the image or the idea of something or the way something looks versus the reality of it and how that actually impacts you and your family, you know? So I think it's always a good time to take a second in between Thanksgiving and Christmas and pause, reflect, and say, hey, how was this last holiday? Is that something we want to transfer into the Christmas season, you know? So I think, one, the time between Christmas, Thanksgiving and Christmas, it does, you know, you blink and it's here. But two, it also does give you a moment to pause and to say, hey, is this how we want to be celebrating the Christmas time with our kids, with our families,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Yeah, that was very nicely put. That was such a nice summary for everything that I just said.
Like, were you listening as you were putting Mia back to sleep?
Melissa had to give me the stop sign briefly a moment ago and was like, I need to put my daughter back to sleep. So I just kept going. But it's interesting, Melissa, you put that together so well. And it's true. Like, it's really about, and my husband's family was very set on, they're rigorous with their traditions. And then I came along and was like, well, you don't really
And
have
blew
to do
like,
it. Yeah, I swear to God, I didn't blow
no,
anything up.
I'm teasing.
I observed actually in the very early years and was like, and I very gently eased my opinion in as to how things could shift and how much better it could be. Because I try to be, that quote from that movie, Big Fat Greek Wedding, where the mother, the matriarch, she says to her daughter, the husband is the head of the house, but the wife is the neck, and she can turn the head any way she wants.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
That's kind of my mantra. But yes, agreed 100% wholeheartedly. Create your own traditions. Don't feel that pressure, because if you start to feel that pressure, you really shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And it's okay, and it's all right. Change is okay, and welcome it and create your own traditions. We're creating our own traditions with our kids, and it's a little off sometimes. And I feel, because we miss I miss my stepkids and my grandkids and everything, but it's still a beautiful thing. And everyone's creating their own traditions, and it is very nice. So on that note, we hope that you guys are having a really good holiday season thus far. We hope you guys caught some sales with Black Friday in the US.
Oh my gosh.
For our US listeners, I don't know that they do it in any other countries, but in the United States, the day after Thanksgiving is called Black Friday, and it is when there's like a bunch of sales and everybody like stocks up for Christmas.
I reeled myself in this year because I'm not going to lie, in the years past, I tend to have a little bit of a shopping issue. And
No.
Black Friday, they get me, like, that marketing that they do. Yeah, that's aimed for people like me, because I'm like, oh, look, I could get two for the price of one.
I know,
if I buy it right now, but I have to buy it right now. So I'm proud to say that I did not put myself in any type of debt, paid for it in, well, as close as you can get to cash these days. Like full debit, like nothing went on a credit card. I was very proud of myself.
That's actually pretty good. I didn't
Right?
I didn't quite take that approach. I did. I will say I had a cutoff point where I was like, I have 3 things left that I would really like to buy because they're on sale, and I want to get them. Now, one of them, once it goes back to full price, is $80 more than what it is right now, and it's
See, those you have to take advantage of.
Yeah, I took advantage. I already took quite a bit of advantage, but I used up my fun money budget. And we're blessed. We're blessed that I was able to even do that, and to have a fun money budget is a huge blessing. But I already used it. And so now I'm like, no, the rest of this
Like
has
it's
to
gone.
go for,
Can't.
yeah, no, the rest of this is for bills and like household items. Nevertheless, we do hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving and that you're gearing up for the holidays, and, take it easy, find some joy, find some peace for yourself. Don't let yourself get too wrapped up in everything, because at the end of the day, it is truly just another day. We have just marketed the crap out of it. So take ease.
And don't forget, in 365 days, there's another holiday
Whole
season.
other
So
one. Don't worry about it.
you know what? I do this all the time. I put so much pressure on like this year, but you always, God willing, there will be another holiday season, and we're gonna blink and it'll be here again. So
That's true.
try to be forgiving with yourself.
Exactly. Well, thank you all for listening. We greatly appreciate all of you, and take care.
Bye.